Welcome to Night's Arcade, I'm Sleepless Night, and we are back in Hardspace Shipbreaker because it's release day. After almost 2 years in early access, Shipbreaker is finally out there in the wild, and as previously mentioned, the release comes with a host of updates and tweaks, as well as the obligatory progress reset, which those of us who have been with the game since the beginning have become used to, but this will be the last one. So if you've always wanted to clear that debt to Lynx but have never before been able to put in enough time before going back to square one, you can now rest safe in the knowledge that you have all the time in the world. Focus Entertainment were kind enough to let me have a look at the content a bit early, so I've been poking around in this new build for a few days, trying to see what's changed and making notes. Some of the changes are subtle, some are obvious, but I've now been given the full patch notes, so I'm going to go over them and go into just a few of them in a bit more detail. I'm also going to give you details of a Steam key giveaway that I'm doing on the channel later today. So if you want a chance of winning a Steam key for the game and you're watching this video on release day, May 24th, 2022, stick around and I'll let you know how to enter. So first and foremost, and I will spend a little more time on this first point than on any of the others, Update 1.0 adds the third and final act of the campaign, including a closing cinematic and credits sequence. Now, I couldn't give you any spoilers about Act 3 even if I wanted to, because the 3 or 4 days I've had to check out this update before launch simply haven't given me enough time to get that far. I'm currently about halfway through Act 2. What happens in that closing cinematic? I don't know, your guess is as good as mine, I have no idea. If it's as emotionally resonant as the opening cinematic of Shipbreaker, I am looking forward to it though. Now, what it doesn't say here, or anywhere else in the patch notes, but those of you who have been following the updates should already know, is that the voices that were originally provided by the dev team have now all been replaced with professional voiceover artists. Well, all but one, and I'll come to that in a minute. For the most part, I think these are good changes.
Hey, newbie. Hey!
Lou, Kai and Dee Dee sound more natural, and the performances are slightly more nuanced than they were before. Likewise, the voice of Lynx Salvage Division President, Calicia Paulson. All slight improvements despite the stellar job that the dev team did with the original recordings. There are two that I'm not fond of though, and one is the Lynx administrator, Hal Rhodes. Hal was always designed to be irritating, and both the dev and the new actor have tried to convey the pompous self-importance of the character in much the same way, but I feel as though voiceover artist Adam Nurada has gone a bit over the top with it and pushed it into comical. Well, that's only my opinion, however, and it is a small matter. Slightly more jarring though, at least for those of us who played through early access, is the replacement of our foreman, Joseph Weaver. And what's surprising to me about this change is that I am a huge fan of his replacement, Battlestar Galactica alumnus Aaron Douglas. BSG is not only one of the best sci-fi shows of all time, I personally consider it to be one of the best TV shows, period. And Chief Tyrrell was one of my favourite characters in the show. For most people, I think this will be a welcome addition, and I think it was a huge win for BBI. I think the problem is that Weaver was there before almost all of the other voice cast. He has been there since the beginning, before there were other shipbreakers on the comms, before there was even a campaign, and he was voiced spectacularly well to begin with. On top of which, we're hearing a lot of the same lines we've heard Weaver repeat for 2 years, but in someone else's voice, with someone else's interpretation of those lines. Aaron Douglas is an excellent actor, but his Weaver doesn't sound right somehow to me. It doesn't sound as jaded and worn as the original voice, and I know that there's a whole community of cutters who will miss him. The only voice that hasn't changed is that of Control, still voiced by Shipbreaker executive producer Jessica Klein, although much, if not all of her dialogue does sound as though it's been re-recorded. Additional dialogue has certainly been added. And, where the voice of Control was previously ubiquitous, your suit now has a completely separate voice, and I do like that change. Next up on the major points is that after 2 years of requests, the Save Ship feature has now been added, allowing you to save your progress on a ship, log off, and return to that ship later. There's no special command or anything, the pause menu just says save and quit the same way it always did, only now it actually means it. Just choose the save and quit option, log off, and it will all still be there the next time you log in. You do have to return to the Hab to use the save feature though. You can't do it from out in the bay, though of course you can come inside at any time anyway, so it makes little difference. Steam achievements have now been added, of course. There are 10 in total. I think I've so far unlocked 6. I'm not going to show you what they are, I'll let you find that out for yourself. In the gameplay updates section, we have a few things. The spawn rate of damaged atmospheric regulators has been greatly reduced, and the number that can spawn in a single ship has been limited. Now, again, I haven't gotten far enough into the hazard levels to start coming across lots and lots of damaged regulators, but this did need addressing, as you would occasionally come across situations where an explosive decompression was a roll of the dice in terms of damage and how extensive it would be. I can tell you that the physics have been severely tweaked, so when you do an explosive depress, the results are at least a little bit more predictable than they were before, at least on the Mackerel, Atlas and Javelin classes. I can't yet speak for the Geckos. There are still certain items that still behave as if the laws of physics simply don't apply to them, but other than that, the only real X-Files incident I've had was while cutting loose a Mackerel nacelle, at which point the entire side of the ship came off like a nanocarbon baseball bat and smacked the nacelle into my face, instantly removing me from the innings of the living. The overhaul of the physics is much more noticeable in some places than in others, like everything else. Fuel canisters, for example, are now way heavier than they were before, and I can only assume this is to prevent them from blowing around like napalm-infused confetti when removed from a bulkhead, but whatever the reason, I promise you'll notice. Salvage goals now reward mastery points as well as links tokens. Credits are no longer converted to mastery points, and these next 3 I'll come back to in a moment because they tie in with a couple of others, as you'll soon see. Armadillo part extraction has been removed from some things but added to others, so parts to repair your little armadillo tug can no longer be removed from thrusters, nacelles or radiation filters, but they can now be removed from waste disposals, hoists and food processors. Now, let's come back to those 3 points I skipped, because they tie in with the next couple of points, and I think I can sum all of those up for you in far fewer words. So here goes. It seems to me that the entire game has been dumbed down. Why do I think that? Well, let's have a look. Even though I haven't reached Act 3 yet, it does seem that I have rocketed through the levels way faster than I did the last time. And this is presumably because mastery point requirements for all levels have been retuned. I seem to have upgraded my equipment way faster than I did before, and that seems to be because upgrade costs and links token reward rates have been retuned. Yes, you don't get nearly as many now as you did before, but upgrades that used to cost 150 links tokens now only cost 20. I reached the same point with my armadillo repair by the middle of Act 2 as I had done by the end of it the last time, because armadillo part requirements per level have been greatly reduced. Now, I'll grant you that this one might be for a more hard-hitting story payoff at the end of Act 2, but it continues. Those stickers you earned simply for bragging rights after you'd done everything else are now much easier to obtain, much too easy in my opinion. The bottle one that used to require 100 salvaged bottles now requires only 15, and most of the stickers requirements have been similarly retuned. But the biggest one for me is that the value of objects and materials has been tuned across the board. And has it ever? This can be seen most easily in the value of the ships in the job board, with relatively low-level mackerels that used to be worth 3 or 5 million now having values of 10 million or 15 million. Airlock consoles that used to be worth just 45,000 credits apiece are now worth more than 125,000 credits each. Almost all the components seem to be worth a great deal more, but your debt to links remains exactly the same. $1.25 billion. I'm sure I should be saying credits, frankly, but if you want us to say credits, don't use a dollar sign. That debt, the end of which seemed so impossibly far away, now seems like not quite so much of a chore. I'm certain it still will be, but I liked the idea that it seemed almost insurmountable before, and this is pretty much the core concept from which everything else proceeds. I can't understand why they've done this, except maybe to try to pull in some of those players who might not have such a long attention span. The only good thing I can think of about this, and perhaps this figured into the decision, is that those tiny objects that most of us would carelessly write off before for the sake of speed are now also more valuable, so you might need to be a bit more careful. Anyway, moving on. Ghost ship spawn rates have been increased from 5% to 15%. Can't say I'm happy about that one either, but you can still skip them entirely if you wish, so it shouldn't make any real difference to those of us who don't care much for those digital dickheads from deep space they call AI nodes. Cut point visuals unified between Stinger, Split Saw, Cuttable and Demo Charge only cut points, so it should now be easier to tell which of those cut points is which. You could tell before, and if you couldn't, you could always just fire your Stinger at it and if it bounced off, you knew it was a Demo Charge only one, but it should be a little easier now. The Mackerel Exolab and the Atlas Scout have now swapped unlock ranks, so I think the Scout now unlocks first and the Exolab second, but correct me if I have that back to front. Early Atlas ships can now spawn with no engine blocking access to the thruster, and this one I have seen. The first Atlas ships now don't have a quasar thruster to remove, so that you can run the gauntlet of flames and explosions to shut off the fuel and prevent yourself from being cooked. The later ones still have this interesting disassembly technique, but now I guess you're lulled into a false sense of security by early ships, if you've never encountered them before. All adds to the terror later, I suppose. Base tether amount has been increased from 10 to 20, and the base tether lifetime increased from 30 seconds to 60, which are both welcome changes if you ask me. However, the maximum lifetime has been reduced to 5 minutes, and the tether amount upgrades have been retuned, so swings and roundabouts, I guess. Medkits have been added at the kiosk, the interface of which has also been made to look like it's lost a few IQ points, somehow. But patch kits can now spawn in ships, so at least it won't always be necessary to interact with the slightly stupider looking kiosk when you're busy trying to plug the holes in your suit. The Mackerel cockpit has been redesigned to be more easily salvaged. I'm not sure I'd agree it's more easy, but it certainly makes a little bit more sense now than it has so far, and you don't have to waste quite as much aluminium plating when you're throwing it all into the processor, because it all comes apart in little pieces now. Small debris produced from cutting or explosions will now vaporize more often in order to help keep the worksite clean. What I've observed about this is that when you cut through something small with your split saw, it might sometimes just burn away like a cut point would, instead of leaving you with two even smaller pieces of useless ramel. It doesn't happen all the time, but it's nice when it does. I've already covered what's changed about the dialogue, so I won't go into that, and for the increased font sizes and styles, see the stupid-looking kiosk comment I made a few minutes ago. It's apparently now possible to back out of the oxygen drain pop-up when choosing OpenShift, but I never chose OpenShift, so I'll have to take their word for that. Ship images in the job board have been updated, and unread messages in the employee terminal have an unread icon next to them, so that's helpful once you start to get a ton of messages in there. Most of the optimizations are things that you notice just seem to work better than they did before, and you will notice some of the visual ones immediately. Others escaped me. I can't say that I've noticed the visual updates to the armadillo parts, but that might well be just because I wasn't paying much attention to the appearance of those components. The changes to things like chip bags and bottles are more noticeable though, and the maximum number of demo charges you can place at one time has now been reduced from 35 to 15, the reasons for which seem pretty clear in terms of optimization. The appearance of the armadillo is definitely noticeable. It looks much better than it did before. The changes to the suit in the Hab are a little more subtle, but still noticeable. Subtitles have now been added to all cinematics. Links, contract terms and conditions have been updated, which tells me I clearly didn't read through them carefully enough, but if we'd done that, I suppose Links wouldn't have nearly as many employees now, would they? Quality settings have been added to the Video Settings option tab, as you can see here, along with anti-aliasing options. A pneumatic tube has been added to the hab for some reason, possibly for you to receive items in the mail from home or from links. I've no idea, but there it is, look. Isn't it cute? We'll come back to this one in a moment, because it's the last one that I actually want to discuss at length. So, controller vibration has been retuned to reduce strain on the hands for those of you who use a controller, as I do. Objects with health bars will now flash briefly when damaged. Campaign dialogue will now pause and resume when a player dies and respawns. Weaver will now still introduce himself to the player even if they skip the tutorial. Object health pips have been changed so that they are all yellow. And recovered data drives now have better organisation and titles in the data miner screen, which can only be a good thing. It used to drive me nuts trying to keep track of all those recovered files and which ones I'd read and which ones I hadn't. There are, of course, a ton of bug fixes, but that list is extensive, so I'm not going to go into it point by point, but if you're a regular player, you will notice some dramatic improvements to the way the laws of physics behave. And any new issues that might have been introduced with this update will be taken care of in due course, I'm sure. So, back to that armadillo now being visible from the salvage bay. I was quite surprised by this, as I had played the update for about 3 days by the time I got these patch notes, but I went outside to where I assumed it might be, and nothing. This in turn led to something of a revelation for me, since for 2 years I have assumed the hab was inside the Master Jack. There were things that bothered me once the quote-unquote 3D hab came along in September of last year, like the fact that the Master Jack has no windows and seems to be fairly small, but I figured maybe the hab we've seen could be squeezed in there, and maybe the window thing was just an oversight that BBI would correct in later updates. Looking out of the window of your hab, you can see other cutters working in other bays on other stations, so I just assumed that this was another one of those. But no! It turns out that this is my bay, and the hab is up there. Look, there's the armadillo, tiny little thing hanging on the outside like a bug in a gigantic metal spider web. And for those of you about to claim superior knowledge and climb to the nearest rooftop to shout of my obvious stupidity, why the hell do we have to go in here at the end of the shift? It says, end shift to return to your hab. Why is there a door in it? It's even got a picture of a f***ing house on it, for crying out loud. Well, maybe behind that door is just where you go to change out of your suit for the day, you say. And then what? The Master Jack isn't attached to any other part of the station. It just hangs there in space like all the regular Jacks. So how the hell do we get from there to the hab? Do we beam up? No, I cry foul, sir. It makes no sense. Please explain it to me. This is the point where someone comes along with a perfectly sensible explanation that will indeed make me feel like an idiot, but I still feel I was justified in my assumption that the Master Jack was where the hab was. Anyway, there we are. Ooh, one more thing before I explain about the competition. There's a new sticker in the Employee Advancement section, and it says, Achievement Undocked, with a little picture of the armadillo on it. What does all this mean? And why do you need 2 of them to earn the sticker? I have no idea, but I can't wait to find out. You guys must know by now that I have my theories about a Shipbreaker sequel being set out there in the deeper solar system, where you use the ship you acquired in the first game to go out and break ships instead of cutting them here in the bay, but they are just my crazy theories, and you see how the one about the Habitation unit worked out. For now, let's just concentrate on the release of this game, which, in spite of the very few negative comments I made during this video, is still one of my top 10 favourite games of all time. So let's enjoy the ride. BBI have said that this journey isn't over, quote-unquote. They have also said there might be new ship classes coming after the launch at some point, and of course, there is a console release in Shipbreaker's future, which I'm very sorry to say I still have no information about, only that they are working on it. As soon as I know more than that, I will let you know. That's it for this video, but if you're watching this on release day, I will be streaming the game tonight from 9 PM BST. That's 1 PM Pacific time. And Focus have kindly given me 3 Steam keys to give away. All you have to do is join the live stream right here on YouTube and enter the command now shown on screen into the chat. You will also have to join my Discord, as that is what I use to verify the correct claimant and send them their prize. The Discord link can be found in the video description and in the Knights Arcade channel header. If you can't find it there, you can find me on Twitter at Knights_Arcade, or simply ask for the Discord link in the stream chat. The chatbot will draw the winners at 11 PM BST, roughly 2 hours after the stream begins. I've been away for a while because of a house move, and I have another one coming up in the next few months, but in the meantime, keep an eye out for new videos and live streams. And until then, from Knights Arcade, this is Sleepless Night, saying nighty-night.